Hi gang, Rob here. It's the evening of 11 September 2017. Yeah, September 11th, 2017. 16th anniversary of the day the world changed forever in my lifetime. Wow. But that's a somber memory. This is sort of a happy video. Those of you who sort of follow me on Instagram, maybe on Facebook, noticed something different this summer. The Black 77 Goldwing has been absent, and instead you've seen some pictures of this rather odd looking red beast. What happened was this: I found myself riding more and riding long distances more. And I had a couple issues with the Goldwing that just made me start to not feel so comfortable on long trips with a 40-year-old motorcycle. And I started looking for an upgrade, an updated touring motorcycle. And this is what I came up with. And here's what it is. This is a 1995 Honda ST1100. The ST1100, I think, was released in 1989, and it was really a purpose-built European sport tourer called the Pan-European. The ST1100 alphanumeric designation was on the European models, but of course the American market models were not sold as the Pan-European. In fact, the American market models weren't sold much at all, believe it or not. So the Pan-European, or the Pan, as our British brothers call it, was purposely designed to be able to traverse the continent easily in a day at 100 miles an hour. Enough fuel to go about 300 miles if it's running right. An engine, braking system, and suspension, as well as driver and pannier ergonomics to make that trip viable in comfort. Oh, and by the way, it had to handle. Okay, so that was sort of the envelope that this bike was designed and engineered to fill. So what is it? Well, it is a distinctly sport touring motorcycle. So much more nimble and sporty than, say, a Goldwing, certainly more than a Road Glide, but more comfortable to ride, especially over long distances, than a sport bike or a super sport bike. A couple different manufacturers went after this market in the late 80s, early 90s. The two most notable, Kawasaki with their Concours, and of course Honda with the ST. Now the Concours took a decidedly different approach. Kawasaki used a water-cooled inline 4-cylinder 1300 engine, sort of a detuned modified sport bike engine, and then built a motorcycle around it to go touring with. Honda went completely another direction, and look at this. Kind of a little bit hard to see on this side, but this is the left side of the motorcycle, and you see a valve cover and two sets of head plumbing on one side, sticking out at a funny angle. And over here you can see a little better. Gosh, it looks like a car. Another set of two cylinders and a valve cover. So the two cylinders here, exhaust ports, and then inside this sort of half cover is the timing pulley and belt assembly. Oil filler cap, looks like it could be on your Honda Civic, doesn't it? Well, what it is a longitudinal 90-degree V4. And gosh, for those of you who might be old IndyCar aficionados, you'll remember when Honda came to Indy in the early 90s with a V8 to compete with the Chevy Indy V8. It was the pukiest sounding thing in the world because cylinders opposite each other in the V8 format fired at the same time. This does the same thing. I got to tell you, it might be the ugliest exhaust note in any motorcycle I've ever loved. So it almost sounds like, if it had a better exhaust, it might sound like stereo Ducatis. Instead, well, I'll let you be the judge. See, it doesn't have that. It doesn't have that Honda VFR or Yamaha VMAX sort of 350 Chevy note. It sounds like a Bergman on steroids, or maybe a big side-by-side four-wheeler. I don't know. But the exhaust note notwithstanding, it is a very large, almost 1100 cc, very understressed torque monster of an engine, especially mid-range torque. Only 101 horsepower and about 82 pound-feet of torque, but at very low RPMs. And it's made to just go all day long at 80 miles an hour. At 80 miles an hour, you're turning about 4,000 RPM. These things were advertised to have about 140 mile an hour top speed. And a red line of about 8,000 RPM. This one only 28,000 miles. It's a 95, pretty good deal. And I can say, with its over 5 foot wheelbase, 61.2 inches, and certainly not a trick suspension, but a really good suspension, it does what it was designed to do. It just sucks up miles of asphalt and leaves the rider's rear end in really good shape. I have yet to get off this bike to get gas or take a break and think, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. I get no back fatigue, no sleepy buns, nothing like that. It's just a pretty wonderful ride. So other than that power plant, which is pretty neat, it is of course a liquid cooled motorcycle. And although I spent just almost $1,100 sort of making it ready, I bought it from an old guy about an hour and a half south of here who'd had it for 20 years, and let's just say his version of his maintenance regime and what I found evidence of were two different things. But anyway, they have a common coolant leak that's underneath the carburetors that sit in the V of the engine, and this one has it. It's a really slight seep. It never leaves anything on the ground, but there's like a residue trail down the back of the engine of coolant. But other than that, it's totally up to snuff. This is kind of a pain. You know, I've never had a bike with this much body work, and it's kind of a pain. You can't do anything except add oil without taking a body panel or four off. Right here is the coolant overflow bottle with a level indicator here. But even though it's translucent, because it's so in the dark, you really can't see the coolant level. You have to take off this side panel to access it, so that's become kind of a pain in the rear. It is rocking a Corbin seat. It's a gel seat with leather, not vinyl, leather seating areas. So this panel, this one, and this one, all leather with vinyl surrounds. And you know, guys told me, oh, you're gonna hate that seat. They're too hard, they're too hard. Well, it is hard, but I find it hard in a good way, believe it or not. This backrest and pouch are Honda line stuff that the original owner purchased for it, gosh, over 20 years ago, and then took off. And the second owner had this big nasty, like early 70s Vetter trunk that he painted dark gray to match the trim. It's functional, I just don't like having it on here. The saddlebags on this bike they're sort of integral. They're factory bags. and they're quite large. You can't really see with my jacket stuffed in here, but they sort of tuck back underneath the tailpiece. Easy to get a full-size helmet in. Very secure, very weather tight, and super easy to remove. Your ignition key goes here. This flip latch releases the hook on the front of the bag, and then you just slide it back and pull it out. And away you go. Carry handles. Interesting fuel storage system. Your gas filler here at the back of this cover, and this is not a gas tank, this is a plastic engine cover. Underneath here sits a round air cleaner like you'd find in an older car, and underneath that air cleaner are the 4 carburetors. But the gas tank sort of runs from here back and under the seat to about here. And electric fuel pump and filter and fuel sending unit all are very much automotive. They're housed underneath a plate that comes right up out of the top of the gas tank. The mirrors are integral, and they have sort of a quick release housing. So if you bump them, they just pop off and pop back on. Front turn signals are housed in them. Lockable storage on the right side of the bike, and then another storage bin without a lock on the left. These are knee pads. I don't know if the original 89s had these or not, but if you're riding spiritedly, you use them. A couple mods that I think are necessities on these bikes. When I got it, it had handlebar risers that were homemade by the second owner, the guy I bought it from, and they were welded steel tubing with like ATV clamps, and the welds were badly undercut. And I purchased a set of Rox Speed aluminum risers. They're 3.5 inches higher than stock, which puts you in a much less aggressive, much more touring friendly riding position, I guess. But with that, as you can imagine, your body's tilted up and back. The factory windscreen was pretty inadequate. It's about 16.5 inches tall. I went, after much research, with a Clearview 20-inch screen with, again, another Honda line part. This is a 5-position adjustable air vent from the Goldwing accessory catalog, but Clearview buys them and installs them in their screens. It's actually really cool. Even with it closed, you do get vented air, just pressure equalizing air up through the top of that vent. Also, if you can see down there, that is pressure equalizing vent air that comes in through this slot. So although you get good wind protection, you get airflow on this bike. So it's really good on hot days, and actually really good in the rain too. Why am I telling you about all this? Well, because it's almost the 3rd weekend in September. The 3rd weekend in September is Bark River Grind-In weekend. And I'm thinking real seriously, if the weather is going to be at all tolerable, of making that 1,000-mile round trip on this bike. I've taken it on some sort of shakedown trips around Fort Wayne, you know, 60, 70 miles out, day trips, and have had no issues. So I think it's about time to put it to the long road trip test. Oh, here's a little conversation piece. Check out the custom cooling slot in my front fender. Yeah, that's not factory. The old boy I bought it from had the bright idea that he'd get better front tire wear if he put a one size larger rear tire on the front, mount it with the wrong rotation, and be good. Well, I got 20 miles down the road riding at home, stopped to get a bite to eat and check things over, and I saw a big old goober of what I thought was tire rubber from a semi sticking out of the front of my fender, and what looked like a scratch down the middle of my fender. I put my finger in it and it went through. Yeah, my tire was melting my fender away. So I had 70 more miles to go and rode home watching my fender disappear like a freaking Andy Warhol painting. So I got home and finished it. So it kind of looks like it's supposed to be there. I am in the market for a new fender, by the way. So how would I characterize this ST? It's large, it's a little top heavy. Around town it's a little bit of a horse. Once you get used to it, it's not bad. Wet, it's almost 700 pounds. Every bit of 700 pounds with a full tank of fuel. Holds a little over 7 gallons, so add 50 to your 700 or your 646 pound dry weight and you're there. It is plenty fast. It handles like a dream for having a non-adjustable front suspension and a rear suspension that's not particularly trick for its day. I think if you look through the window you can see a blue coil spring around a monoshock. It's adjustable for preload and damping, but nothing high-tech. It just does a good job. It does have an anti-dive system, although this is a 95, it does not have ABS. And the front and rear brakes are not linked, but it does have an anti-dive front fork and brake system. It just goes where you point it. I've never scared myself in a turn, and it is night and day an improvement over the handling of the 77 Goldwing. So that's kind of it. And these were widely regarded for many, many years as the best sport touring bike on the market. Sorry BMW guys, it was. It was replaced in what, 2003 with the ST1100, a fuel injected, better looking motorcycle. A lot of guys prefer the 1100 to the 13, believe it or not. This 4 carburetor system seems to work better than the early fuel injection on the 1300, and the 1300s really warm up your hiney. Not so on the 1100. So I'll hopefully share some footage with you guys later in the week on my trip. That's all for now. Before we go, I'll show you a little bit of footage of me riding the bike with GoPro, and maybe do another quick video with some of the gear that I've picked up that seems to work really well on this bike. So take a look. Here's some riding footage, guys. I guess we'll fire it up, take it for a ride, guys. Try to do a little country road, a little interstate for you. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I probably killed the audio on that because of the wind noise that was shooting with the GoPro on the top of my head. So I wanted to talk helmets a little bit. For summer wear and around town wear, I really like the half skull helmet. This helmet with a good pair of glasses gives me great visibility, superb peripheral vision, and ability to hear, which I think is of paramount importance in town. Still a very high quality helmet from Bell. It's got an adjustable base of the skull strap inside. There's also an ear covering insulated sort of quilted zip in back that helps during those marginal weather days. But on a long trip, especially in iffy weather, and I don't like wearing a full face helmet. I like to be able to have all my peripheral vision and all my hearing. But on a long trip, especially in fall in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, you really need full coverage. I just bought this helmet. It's an HJC CL17. Not a super expensive helmet. They're about 150 bucks. They have a no tool shield replacement system. It's a 5-position shield also. You can wear it open, which I like to do unless I'm at highway speeds. It also locks in the closed position with this button, which is going to be very hard to manipulate one-handed. So with that pushed back, it will not let the shield open, and it locks it down tight against the rubber seal. And then click it open and it opens up in whatever position you want. You have top of the helmet front vents that exhaust out the back. Another vent that opens and closes right above the visor that acts really as a defogger if your shield is closed, and then a mouth nose vent down at the bottom that is openable and closable. It's a very quiet helmet for highway wind noise, and it's pretty doggone comfortable. So that'll be making the trip to Michigan with me if weather permits me taking that trip. And I'll be back in just a minute and show you what jacket we'll be taking. Actually, jacket system. Be right back. Okay, now the jacket system that I bought specifically for long distance touring on the ST is by Tourmaster. It's the Tourmaster Flex Series 3 jacket, and what I have laid out for you now is sort of the main component of the jacket. So it's a mesh nylon, very heavy mesh that's extremely breathable, with a textile collar, textile shoulders, and sleeves. And underneath these nylon reinforced areas there is motorcycle armor. So shoulder, elbow, and forearm. And then there's a back panel. I think you can sort of see the outline of it here. Lots of pockets inside. 2 large zipper pockets on the outside. The extended back piece to cover your rear when you're hunched over. Adjustable tension on the arms, or adjustable size on the arms, because you got to keep that armor in the right place. And then here's why it's called a Flex Series 3. That's your main component of it. Along with that comes a full quilted lining, full arms, by the way, and that would be the third thing you go to. The second thing you go to is this full heavy nylon textile outer shell. And the neat thing about this jacket for me is that it looks good no matter which way you're wearing it. You know, if you're wearing just the mesh, it doesn't like you're wearing, you know, a zip-in lining of a larger jacket. It looks like a nice mesh jacket. If you're wearing it with the nylon outer shell, it looks like it was made to be that. There's even more padding in that outer shell, so it's really quite good. So I'll be wearing that, and I'll probably, looks like with the weather we're going to have forecast, I'm not going to need the heavy lining, but I'll be taking both of these components for sure. Just one helmet, I'll be taking the full face HJC, and then a couple different pairs of gloves. A mesh pair for warmer times of day, and a full leather pair for cold mornings, and of course rain gear. I'll keep you posted from the road, my friends. Oh look, the ST found its way back into the garage. How did it do that? That's all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the word is sharp.